Thank you so much for joining us again for another edition of The Collective here on WSME Enlightenment Radio. Hope all is well with everyone as we almost move into March. Heck, we're almost there. We are there. So, without further ado, a few weeks ago, we had the pleasure of being introduced to Russel Frederick. And Russel Frederick is a noted photographer. He has done some of the most amazing work of the last 25 to 30 years. And he's a self taught photographer. And he has been featured or has shot photos for the Oscars, the Emmys, Sundance, the NAACP Image Awards. He's done work with Spike Lee, Lisa Cortez, Ta-Nehisi Coates, Between the World and Me. And he has commissioned work as well for the New York Times, the Washington Post, ESPN's The Undefeated, AARP, Vice, Black Shutter, and Ebony, to name a few. In addition, he has photographed Presidents Obama and Clinton, New York Mayor David Dinkins, fashion icon and guru Dapper Dan, and musicians D'Angelo, Jill Scott, Lauryn Hill, and the elders, Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee. He's also exhibited in Gordon Parks' museum and the Museum of Temporary Photography in Chicago, as well as the Brooklyn Museum. And I just chose those things. Russel Frederick's bio is as long as my arm. So without further ado, and we're going to show some of his work. So I'm sorry, radio people, you're going to have to go to his link and see stuff. But for those who are on the collective page, as well as those who are following Michelle Turner, you'll be able to see the actual mastery of his work. So without further ado, I introduce Bed-Stuy's own Russel Frederick.
Right.
Hey.
Greetings, hey Michelle. Good to
How
see
are
you.
you?
Life
Good to
is
see
good.
you.
Life is good. Happy to be here.
What's the K stand for?
Keith.
So you're Russel Keith Frederick.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Named after anybody or just a nice name?
Yeah, it's a funny story. Russell comes from my aunt gave me this name. Russell was a guy she had a crush on and she thought was gorgeous back when she was in high school or college.
Uh-huh.
And my mother wanted to name me Keith. And my aunt was like, no, you gotta name him Russell. You gotta name him because this gorgeous guy. We want him to grow up with that.
Give us that vibe, that energy.
So I got Russell Keith, and Frederick is my last name, and I can't tell you how often it always gets inverted.
Yeah,
So
I'm
many
sure,
times
right?
everyone's like, "Oh, Frederick." I'm like, "No, it's Russell."
No.
It's Russell. But so glad to be here, Michelle.
And I appreciate you returning again.
Absolutely.
So, what we didn't get to talk about the last time you were here
Yes, ma'am.
was the fact that you are licensing your work through Getty Images.
Yes, ma'am.
And there's no middleman in that.
Oh,
Is you and Getty sitting at the table, correct?
that's affirmative. So, yes, this all came about last year. I can say really a blessing that was introduced to the director, and very interesting about how Getty has always been this titan in the industry, but doing more so commercial work, not really in the community.
Hmm.
So I think their photographers aren't in the community. And I think it became very clear to them as well as to the people who are their subscribers that there was something missing from their archive,
Hmm. Hmm.
which was the cultural nuance stories of us. And I was approached about a collaboration.
Hmm.
And with that just something I had to think about, and just had to make sure that AI still will own all of my pictures, and that this was really a way to get some of my work, which I have been doing um, for the past 25 years, to a wider audience. And I can say, it is a blessing. It has also been
Mm,
a process.
I'm
So,
sure.
a lot of analog images, having to scan them, digitize. Oh my goodness! I think people see the name, but the back end part of the work
Yeah.
is what doesn't get talked about. But I can say this to you: I couldn't be happier. Could I have ever imagined that this independent photographer who has really made photographs with a purpose that Titan like Getty would
Hmm.
be interested? I didn't think that would happen while I was alive. Let me just say that, to be frank.
Really?
No, because it just seems because our agendas and our missions are very different, and
True.
for so often these commercial entities have not recognized, and as well as too, another big factor is oftentimes they want to own the rights.
Correct.
They want to own the rights, and
Correct.
this was something that I would not compromise. And the business side of things can often, I think, just be a non-starter, where terms and conditions about how even your images are licensed, are used, that was super important to me. And
And
that
let me
was
just step in here and explain to
surely
folks that Getty is a powerhouse when it comes to owning and licensing photography.
big time.
And I know from my experience as a reporter, as someone working in a newsroom and, doing this 21st century thing called content,
Right.
that stations pay to have access to those photographs
That's right.
because they call them standard photographs, right? They don't necessarily have a name, or they don't necessarily um, are are like a public figure. They're supposedly everyday people.
Right.
So when you grant your right to let them use your work, they in turn take that work and offer it to everyone, but of course, at a price.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think for me, the benefit really was about getting my work into some new spaces, into a wider audience,
Mhm.
and really
Mhm.
about visibility. So, visibility, which is very important, and in working for myself, and also just thinking about another stream of revenue, that
Right.
how my work is now um, in front of an international audience that did not know about me, but was, I think, interested in some of the work, which is more community based. And this was something that Getty recognized that they didn't have. And with that, I can say that it is a new relationship that I'm just hoping that, it can last for a good while.
Now, two questions.
Yes, ma'am.
One, did you reach out to them or they reach out to you? And the process of getting your work scanned, digitized, how long does all of that take?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so first question is they reached out to me.
Ah,
So they reached out to me. Uh,
okay.
so that's the first. Second thing is in terms of the scanning and uploading of images, this is such a tedious, arduous task. Oh my goodness. I feel like it is, I mean, brain surgery because it is Uh,
So does it
not
Russell,
something you
is it
could you could
like
you see the pain, you can hear the pain,
hours?
you
I
can
can
see the
see the
pain.
pain,
So
I feel it
it,
coming
it's
across.
so the first thing is so everyone so this really not nice word called metadata. Okay. And metadata, for all of you who aren't in the photography world, is all of this information in your digital camera that kind of pops up automatically, like the date, the time, the
Mhm.
place, what uh the ISO in which you photograph the image at. It will tell you all this information automatically. Now, when you have to scan images and Getty and some other stock agencies, they have a format and they want a lot of information about who, what, when, where,
Mm,
and then they have a particular caption style. And then the images have to be scanned to a certain resolution. They have to be
right,
formatted.
right.
And then all of this has to be done manually. So scanning
Ooh.
some negatives. So, and this is literally a case by case, an image by image basis. So you have to scan the image, then you have to clean up the image to do a little bit of retouching so that it is ready to be
Wow.
seen. Then you have to manually input all of this information, and this stuff takes time.
On
It
average, what
uh,
is it what's one picture? How long does one picture take?
I would say one picture, if you including scanning
Mhm.
and retouching and uploading, it's more than an hour. It's
Okay.
more than an hour. It could be easily an hour and a half, 2 hours, depending
Mhm.
on the image. The scanning of the image and even the retouching of the image, that could take maybe 2 hours. That could take maybe even more depending on the image, because I have some negs that are 20 years old,
Uh-huh.
um, older than that, and some stuff where just with time, some dust has gotten on some images that
Mm.
is that just comes with the territory.
Yeah. Yeah.
And um in having to get these images ready, and when you scanning images at a high resolution, depending on the kind of scanner you have, and here it is, I have like this is like my scanning station, like right over here.
Okay.
So like this is my other computer. So this is my workstation right over here. I got my scanner. This is my other computer. So this is literally so my intern would be over here,
Right.
and I would have him here. I'm in my office, and then I have to kind of micromanage and oversee that everything is to perfection,
Yeah.
because it literally
Yeah.
has to be
There
perfect.
has to be that.
It has to be that. This is my reputation as well as for Getty, and the image has to be put out there in the best way. Otherwise, somebody won't buy it, or they will see a
Right.
flaw and they'll keep it moving, or they'll go elsewhere. And that's the thing. Once you get someone on your page, you want to keep them on your page.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
So, uh, this process, God give me strength. And God give me strength, because Lord knows, brother already got some gray. I'm about to be, just completely silver by the time this is done.
By the time it's done. So
Yes.
how many images, Russell?
Oh gosh.
Ooh.
Michelle,
'Cause if you're doing are you and let me just ask, are you doing everything, or are you
no,
just
no,
targeted to give them a
no.
certain type?
Well, they want a lot of stuff from my earlier years.
Okay.
So, like,
Okay.
that's something which they're interested in. And some stuff that may be of some famous personalities, some stuff that's very community oriented. Um, but for me, the thing is, so for everybody, I'm doing a book on Bed-Stuy. So when I first started
Ah.
this, was photographing. And when I made this commitment to photography in 1997, part of what I wanted to do in really doing this work, it was to create a book of Bed-Stuy so that the world really got to see um, the community, the Black community, in a way that they didn't. And I wanted something that would actually be timeless and that
Mhm.
would reach audiences all across the globe. I know that books are still valuable.
Yes.
Photo books
Yes.
are very, very important. People buy them all over the world. They are a reference for films. They are a reference for scholars, as well as too, they are a time capsule of what was taking place during a certain, what a place
Right.
in time.
Right.
So the motive first is I need to get these images digitized for my book, and as well as too some for Getty. So the process is very, very time consuming.
You got a timeline?
Uh, you know what the timeline is now, yesterday, and I would say this:
January.
the problem is a brother got too many jobs.
Yeah.
Too many jobs and really not enough sponsors. So
Ah,
the brother could use some more support. So interns, anybody, photographers who would like to get a NYU education
mm,
from, I'm going to pat myself on the back, a master. I've been doing this
mhm.
25 years. If you really want to learn, you really want to grow, hey, russellfrederick.com, and we could take the conversation from there. But
Okay, so speaking of that,
yes, ma'am.
you've taught in some amazing spaces.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
You really, really have. How did that come about? And give me one example of a place, probably where you enjoyed the
The most,
most.
that would be Ethiopia with the
Mm,
United Nations Educational Science Cultural Organization uh, in 2015, 2014, and 2015.
mhm,
That was a transformative experience for me. Um, I was invited to by a photo festival out there called the Addis Photo Fest. In 2014, I was invited out there by them in the U.S. Embassy to introduce the good people of Bed-Stuy to the people of Ethiopia. And while I was there, um, I met the director of UNESCO, short for United Nations Educational Science Cultural Organization,
mhm.
and was introduced to her by another artist, and I let her know about this mission I had with my photography. And that mission was to really let this work that I've been doing of in Brooklyn and of the African American community, that I wanted the photography, I wanted to try to bridge a gap between the African American community and Africa so that we can really learn more about each other, as well as to uh, really deconstruct the stigmas that a Eurocentric, conservative Eurocentric narratives have been put out here about us
Mhm. Mhm.
that really have fueled a lot of um have that really have fueled a lot of misunderstanding, and also too to empower and teach them on how to be the authors of their own story, because it has been clear on who has really created these images of the continent and of
Mm.
Black America. and how there have been some people with good intentions but have gotten it grossly wrong.
Ah.
And in showing them my work of Bed-Stuy, so when told this to the director, she loved it. And once I showed her my work, and told her that it was the mission of my work was to shift perspectives and to really show the world our humanity. And she invited me to do 3 workshops. And from there, the first 2 were kind of small scale with around maybe 15 students.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third one was a media workshop where I invited some of my colleagues from the Kamonge Collective, and I also invited a photo editor I knew from the New York Times
Mm-hmm.
and some African American writers and filmmakers. And the mission really was to have this comprehensive workshop where we can teach them not only about the craftsmanship and the art form, but the business side of things
Right.
and how
Right.
to really navigate this world of media, and as well as too showing them that it was super important for them to tell this story and document their community and to not think, do not believe the hype that your community is not important.
Mm.
And also too, don't believe the hype that you need to have a master's degree to do this. And my story being self-taught and not a college graduate, it
Mm-hmm.
resonated with them. And I also let them know that there were many landmines out here in the field,
Mm.
as well as that the journey is a steep hill. It
Yeah.
is not a sprint.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
not a sprint. And if they are looking for some instant gratification, they need to
This
choose
ain't
something
it.
else.
This
Right.
ain't it.
This
Go
ain't it.
somewhere else.
This ain't it.
This
But
ain't
if
it.
they are interested in really being the historians
Mm-hmm.
of their community and showing the world Africa that the world has not seen. And I would never forget, like, when I showed them my work, they couldn't believe that my images were contemporary. They were like, Russell, this is Bed-Stuy, like now? I was like, yes.
Wow.
And they were like, we've never seen these images. Why haven't we
Wow.
seen images like this?
Before.
And I just had to really give them a history lesson on all of the greatness that has come from the African American community that they had not seen. They did not even know we had HBCUs.
Wow.
And I had to let them know that. So, in part of this education as well, I brought some films to show
Mm-hmm.
them. I brought them Glory, The Great Debaters, Do the Right Thing.
Mm-hmm.
I also showed them Fruitvale Station and Boys in the Hood.
All right. Hold that thought.
Yes, ma'am.
We got to take a break.
All right.
We're going to finish that conversation
Yes,
and then
ma'am.
we're going to look at some of your work and get your feedback. All
All
right.
right. All right.
Thank you so much, Russell. It is so great to have you here. This is Russell Fredericks, noted photographer, Bed-Stuy, and this is The
Okay.
Collective
That's
right
right.
here on WSME Enlightenment Radio. We'll be back after this. On The Collective, this day, We have noted photographer Russell Frederick. He is self taught, he is out of Brooklyn, New York, and he not only has shown his work all over the world and the United States, but he's taught in various places. And before we had the break, we discussed his teaching in Ethiopia, going through the United Nations. So I want to bring Russell in and welcome him back to the collective. Thank you so much for being here and telling this story because it's important for people to know.
Yes, ma'am. I Photography is such an important language.
Mm,
I think a lot of people just see pictures as, hey, something fun, and then I think a lot of us don't really necessarily value the pictures,
hmm.
or the people who are in them are maybe gone, or you don't have access to them,
Yeah.
or uh, something has happened that maybe has made you want to relive that moment or go back in time.
Hmm.
And for me, I just have come to see the power and really how much photography has shaped the way, even I think we see ourselves, how it has helped shape our own esteem,
Hmm.
and how a lack of some positive images has played a critical role in how we see ourselves, and also too
Absolutely.
how the world sees us.
Absolutely. So can you give us a little bit more of that story in Ethiopia? When we left off, you were talking about the
Yes.
films that you had bought so
Yes.
that they
So
could see.
absolutely. So what I realized, because when I did the workshops, I was at this place called the Blue Nile Film Academy. So really want to give them a salute. So a brother named Abraham,
Mhm,
um, can't remember Abraham's last name right now, but Abraham, he is a well-noted cinematographer. Uh, he has this film school, television and film school, and in bringing some of the films over, I also brought another film. It was called Through a Lens Darkly, and
mhm.
this was and the director of that film was someone who I invited. His name is Thomas Allen Harris, and this is a history of Black photographers. And
Wow.
yes, so this was an extraordinary documentary, and with this, I wanted them to really see just this history of America that was really told, I think, through a perspective of a Black voice,
Mhm.
that they do not necessarily have access to or even had any knowledge of.
Yeah.
And from there, and also too, with the diverse, so Glory gave some historical context. Um, the great debaters showed them really about this excellence from HBCUs.
Mhm.
But with Glory, the image was really about how we fought for our freedom. And this was an image the world did not see, of Black men who really liberated themselves. And as opposed to the world seeing the images of us as slaves.
Correct.
And with the great debaters, it was really highlighting this excellence that is from the South,
Mhm.
from historically Black colleges, and that how we were just as smart and even smarter as some of our white counterparts, and
Mhm.
that how this story, true story at that, which was very important,
Which
and
is
true
really
story,
important. Yeah.
super important.
Yeah.
This wasn't fiction, and that how this small Black college had this undefeated debate team, and then introducing them to the mastery of Spike Lee,
Mhm.
and them getting introduced to Brooklyn,
Right.
um, in a way that I think they hear about in through music more so, and have always heard just these almost like tales from the crypt about the community, and that hey, everybody knows Bed-Stuy is do or die,
Right. Right.
but Bed-Stuy is also this place of black excellence, of social awareness, um,
Mm.
and letting them see that, and then with Boys in the Hood, showing
Mhm.
them California, and again about this story from the inner city, and also giving them some context, because when they just hear about our struggles, some I think how maybe dangerous this perception of how the
Right.
black community
Right.
is just so riddled with all these issues, that there is a lot of institutional racism, and there's a lot of neglect, and there is a backstory that they don't know, um, and also informing them on how some of these systems that we have here in America are not equal, and
Right.
are not to the standard that they may perceive.
Mhm.
So giving them this, and then with Fruitvale Station, which was also a very critical film, because that showing police brutality, but more so on the production side of things,
Mm.
was showing
Okay.
them a film that was made an independent film that was not made with a big budget. And I let them know that this film was shot with one camera lens, one camera, but how the power of a good script, good character
Mhm.
development, uh, really developing a story, and cinematography, knowing how to direct people, and
Mhm.
creating a good cast, you can create something that is dynamic with very little. And not to think that in order to do good work, you always had to have this really
Huge budget. Yeah.
exorbitant budget.
Yeah.
That quality work, and me showing them about introducing Spike Lee and John Singleton, letting them know that these were two icons who have never gotten, what, significant financing, but
Right.
the work that they
Right.
did,
Right.
legendary.
And and believe it or not, I think most black folk in the United States know that, believe that, and that's why we strive so hard to really support those brothers
Absolutely.
and the creatives. I think
Absolutely.
about and I'm trying to get him back. I did an interview with Keith Beauchamp, probably 15 years ago, when he did the original movie on Emmett Till and had Emmett Till's mom's blessing,
Yep.
and
Yep. Yep.
how the community stood up and said, okay, we're going to get this in the movies and
That's
we're going to
right.
go to the movies. And it may not be a blockbuster movie, but it's definitely letting this brother know that he has our support and we believe in the work that he's doing.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. So
I think
important.
that's
So
critical.
significant. Critical. Critical. And I think I also let them know that really think about, why are you doing
Hmm.
this work? And if this if you are really only doing this for fame, or for fortune. Um, and listen, hey, making money is something we all enjoy doing.
Right.
But I think is, and I said to them, do you want to be like a Tyler Perry, or would you want to be like a Spike Lee
Mhm.
or a John Singleton
Right.
at the time? And I said, legacy is something you should keep in mind, and as well as how how film has created how certain filmmakers have created a distorted image of us that we to this very day have not been able to shake, for lack of a better word. Because I said to them, what is the image you think we have of Ethiopia?
Mm.
And they said, please don't say the famine. And I said, there is no other image. It's the
Right.
only other image is maybe Haile Selassie.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's
And I
it.
said, what you think about it? I said, and again, that is the famine was in the 80s,
Yeah.
damn near
Right.
30 something years ago,
2 years
almost 40
ago.
years ago. And here it is. I said, you think people know that y'all have trains?
Mm.
Hell no. And I said, and why is that? Who? And I said, and the same thing is back in America.
Right.
The greatness that we have accomplished. And I said, there are some powers that be that don't want it to be known because this is how, what oppression works.
Absolutely. So speaking of images,
Yes, ma'am.
let's look at some of yours.
All
Now, I
right.
want to ask you about Minneapolis because it looks like you spent some time there
Yes, ma'am.
when the first uh, images we got of George Floyd came out. So, how did that happen, and how did you get this particular photograph?
Um, Thank you, Michelle, for one, hey, just giving me the platform to show this work, to even do a follow up. So, so I'm glad we are able to show some of this work. So this image was made. I went out there on my own dime.
Hmm.
First off, want to make that clear, and I will say, uh, when I went out there, I was really blown away by some of the generosity
Mm.
because once I got there, several people in my network on Facebook and Instagram started making just some donations for me to stay out there a little bit longer and to help provide, what help pay for some of my expenses while I was there.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
this image, which the first image which we showed of George Floyd mural
Uh-huh.
and of two sisters hugging. This is right where in the area. This is the actual bodega
Yeah.
where he was filmed, and it's literally around the corner from where he was killed. And this was maybe I remember George Floyd's murder was May 25th.
Mhm.
I was out there around I think June 1st,
Okay.
and everybody, the community was mourning, and everybody was really trying to hold each other up.
Mhm.
And I was looking particularly for the image of support. So my part of my practice is whenever I am photographing an occurrence like this,
Mhm.
is to really evaluate the location and see what image, if I can create one photograph, what how will one photograph really depict what I'm seeing, what I'm
Mhm.
feeling,
Mhm.
what is really the energy, the emotion? And I would think about actually a few different feelings and just be very conscientious and alert of really what story do I need to tell? What
Mhm.
story has not been told? And
Mhm.
paying attention also to what has been reported, because I'm not just looking to come in and do kind of like some fast food journalism
Right.
or some
Right.
parachute journalism.
Right.
I am really looking to dig a little deeper, get a little bit closer,
Mhm.
really learn, spend some time with some people, and really convey something that I think hasn't been said. So this was a bit of my approach in going in, and that's
Mhm.
where that first image of the two sisters hugging um, in front of the George Floyd mural. That's how I created that.
Now, you also picked up a couple of photos of people who were, it looked like, defending a community?
Yes, 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 yes. So very important image, super important image. So the image of the brothers. This was actually a night watch group of
Mm.
volunteers, and these three black men over here, who you see who are armed,
Uh-huh.
shotguns, with them assault rifles, some military, some of them were hunters. They all came together because what was happening, and I don't think it was being reported enough at the time. It was definitely underreported.
Mhm.
Was Black and Hispanic communities were being targeted, and Black-owned businesses and Latino-owned businesses, and just brown businesses or brown people as well,
Mhm.
being
Mhm.
targeted and set ablaze and being looted.
Wow.
And a few businesses in this community, this is of North Side, um,
Minneapolis.
Minneapolis, had been set ablaze, and the NAACP, the director of the NAACP, the local office in NAACP, uh, organized a meeting with some Black men to really see about who would be interested in volunteering to really stand guard and protect the community.
Mm.
And I say about maybe about a good 30, 30 brothers volunteered
Wow.
um, to
Wow.
stand guard. Some were on rooftops. They created checkpoints, and it was to make sure that this strip was not burnt down. And
Amazing.
this image was so important to me for many reasons, because how we have been criminalized, and I have made it. It has been. Um, I have stayed clear of ever showing an image of a Black man with a gun,
Mhm.
because we are just perceived to be as violent, and there has been a really misrepresentation of us
Mhm. Mhm.
to be just criminals. But this image over here, to me, was these men were doing what the Black Panthers started to do in the 60s, and they were protectors. And
And
I
speaking
wanted
of
the world
which,
to see that.
yeah. Speaking of which, I'm going to turn to a couple of the black and white images because we've got like 5 to 6 minutes left.
Okay,
So there's one with a young lady standing outside uh,
the Black
a
Panther. Oh,
storefront
right,
that
right.
says Black Panthers 1966.
Yes.
So where is this?
This is Bed-Stuy. Um, this is along Schenectady. So I did this image in 2009. This is
Hmm.
Janella Johnny, and this was at a former Black Panther office that was in Bed-Stuy, um, that formed in 1966, and it had been closed down. And unfortunately, a few years later, um, a new business taken over. But this was just a place where the Black Panthers used to meet, where some of the elders told me just some stories uh,
Mm.
that this was like a local chapter of the Black Panthers in Bed-Stuy.
And it's a
So
good thing you recorded that history.
absolutely. So in part of my documentation of Bed-Stuy,
Hmm.
this I have been very, very intentional and strategic in really capturing um, and photographing some of murals, art, landmarks that I know that in the transition of culture, of power,
Hmm.
of influx of gentrification, that this could be whitewashed.
Right.
And it's exactly what happened. Um,
So who are the elders?
uh, Mr. and Mrs. Brooks, this is probably my favorite photograph.
Really?
Mr. and Mrs. Brooks. Mr. Brooks, for everybody who's not watching, Mr. Brooks has on a Stetson and scarf around his neck. He is from Houston.
Ah,
Mrs. Brooks is from Harlem. On the day I took this photograph in 2003, they were married 52 years.
wow. And she's
And
got on a fur coat.
yep, 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 yep. When I approached them, I asked Mr. Brooks if I could take their photograph, and I was doing a book on neighborhood. And before I could even finish, Ms. Brooks said no. And I
And
said,
she looks like the type that would just say,
listen,
no.
real spicy. And I just said, ma'am, with all
Excuse
due
me.
respect. And I said, sir, with all due respect, I'm doing a book on the neighborhood. And I got this, and he said, you're doing a book? And I said, yes, sir. And he said, you are going to do a book on the neighborhood. And I said, sir, I am doing a photography book on Bed-Stuy. I am here to document our people, our culture, and I'm creating something for history. He said, you could take our picture. Miss Brooks cut her eyes. Husband, and he just grabbed him. He said, straighten up and smile for the man. Took the photograph, sent them a copy. 3 years later, I get a call from their daughter asking me if I had any more copies of the picture. And I said, sure. And I said, how are they doing? And the daughter said, well, I have to say this to you. My father passed away.
Mm,
And that picture you took was their last photo together.
wow. Wow.
And I was speechless. And then she said, my mom would like to speak to you. Miss Brooks got on the phone and she said, young man, I owe you an apology.
Mm,
She said, I was focused on the wrong thing. And she
wow.
said, I didn't want my picture taken that day because I didn't think I looked my best. And I didn't think I looked presentable. We were coming from the grocery store and I didn't want my picture taken. And she said, but that picture represents everything what marriage is about. She said, I would have never thought that would be the
Amazing.
last picture with me and my husband. And that picture represents trusting your husband and trusting your partner, even when you may not want to. And she said, I'm so glad I
Wow.
listened to my husband. She said, I would have never thought that would be the last picture we would have
We
together.
would have together. Wow.
And then she
And
said, one final thing. Then she said to me, I wish you the best of luck. And she said, you're going to do well. She asked me for my address. A few days later, I got a thank you card in the mail with $5 to buy a roll.
Oh, that's so nice. That's a wonderful story. That's a wonderful story. You can't get any better. Doc, can you pull up one more picture? And that is the young lady sitting on the steps in Harlem between the two dogs. The couple photo is beautiful, though.
Yep,
Thank you for that one.
yep, yep. So this photograph over here is Stacy Gray. She is a hairstylist, makeup artist, local from Connecticut, originally from Indiana, but
Uh-huh.
spent some time in Connecticut. And this was on the day I actually was photographing Dapper Dan at his Harlem studio. This was in 2018 for Numero magazine in Germany.
Mm.
And I wanted to create something that was powerful, that was iconic, that was strong, that was hip hop. And with that, it really wasn't that hard because Stacy just embodies all of that. And the dogs were part of this vision I had for the cover of the magazine.
Mm.
And while actually we were wrapping up the shoot, the dogs were just in position, and Stacy did what Queen does. She just
And
sat on. I mean, she just made the stoop her throne, and as you can see, she just owned it. And here it is. This image, for me, just embodies like boss. It's like New Jack
mm,
City.
mm,
It's it's so black. It's so strong, and it's just badass. That's all.
it is. It is that. It is
So
that.
with that, and again for me, I like to show the black woman in a way that is isn't I think how I think maybe a lot of black men have maybe or how a lot of men have photographed women. So
Mm,
how when I photograph a woman, I always am looking to really find their personality
hmm.
and as well as create an image and of anybody who I photograph, I like to create an image of them that they can feel good about
Look at that.
themselves.
Yeah.
Indeed. So uh
Russell, thank
yes.
you so much. I appreciate your time and energy. I said that before. And when that book comes out, you may want to consider a certain journalist in Connecticut to do the book talk for you.
Yes, ma'am. Well.
Just just putting it out there.
Listen, I think we friends. I know your name, and you know what? And now I know where you live. So
Hey,
listen,
and so
we will make this happen.
I just, whether it be
Absolutely,
2 years, 5 years, even 10
it
years,
don't matter.
I'll show
Listen,
up.
indeed, indeed. And if I could say one last thing is, I want to thank you, Michelle, for having me on
Oh,
here and really giving me this opportunity to introduce some of the good people who I photographed. So for those who aren't on radio, you can go to russellfrederick.com and you can see some more of this work. As well as too, you can stop by with my positive images gift shop. And if
and
you're
where's
interested,
that?
that's on my website
That's
as
on your
well.
website as
On my
well?
website. So yes, it's I have some affordable merchandise for
Okay.
everybody. So a coffee mug, pillow, tote bag, as well as laptop case for anybody who may
Ooh,
be looking to get something,
laptop
with
case.
yep,
Hmm.
something fresh, something fly, something soulful, something hip hop, and just something artistic, something that ain't nobody else got. If you like being an original, step up to russellfrederick.com. Positive Images gift shop. We got to get some more positive images of our people out here.
Russell Frederick, thank you so much. I
Thank you.
appreciate you. I hope to see your work flourish even more during the century. And
Absolutely.
when the book gets ready to come out, come back. You can come
Listen,
back before that, but
let me tell you, I'm gonna come back when I'm speaking at Yale. How about that?
that would be fabulous.
When I'm talking at
Y'all
Yale,
heard it here first.
indeed, indeed, indeed.
Okay.
When I'm
So
at Yale,
Doc is pointing his finger at me.
all right.
So gotta wrap it up.
All right.
But
Doc, you
thank
don't
you,
want no
Russell.
problems. All right.
Yeah, I
Thank
don't want
you.
no problems with my producer. This has been this has been the
Right.
collective here on WSME Enlightenment Radio. See you next week.
All right. Peace. Have a good one, people. Thank you.